Welcome to Dish and Nutrition Podcast, where we dish on trending nutrition topics, all the while making it easy and fun to understand. I'm your host, Sarah Williams. And you've got me today, folks. Emma is out for this podcast, but that is totally okay. It's actually my fault, so I'm sorry, Emma. All right, today we are going to be talking about breastfeeding nutrition. And I know this is a sensitive topic to some because breastfeeding is a difficult journey, but I did want to touch on it because it is so nutrition forward, and it literally fuels everything that you are going to be feeding your baby and how you nourish your body. So definitely important to have it on the docket of this like pregnancy baby series that I just inadvertently ended up doing. But first, I did actually have some housekeeping that I wanted to clarify. So for this series that I'm doing regarding like babies, pregnancy, all these pregnancy recommendations or nutrition recommendations regarding all of it has been for singleton pregnancies, unless stated otherwise. So I just wanted to make that 1,000 times sure. If you are pregnant with twins, triplets, whatever else you may be enduring. This is for singleton pregnancies. If you do have questions regarding nutrition, and if you do have a twin pregnancy or above that, you do want to consult with your doctor because those recommendations are probably going to be a little bit more different. I also had something else that I wanted to clean up or housekeep, whatever you want to call it. I had an Alaskan registered dietitian reach out to me on our podcast Instagram, Dish and Nutrition Podcast, shameless plug. And she had a few points that I wanted to clarify and share with the listeners. So one, she said she works in primary care and they do give out vitamin D supplements to patients. But she also said there is sunlight in Anchorage in the winter. I think I had said, all of Alaska basically just gets dark for the winter or whatever. She wanted to clarify they do have sunlight in the winter in Anchorage. They're just really short days, only like 5 to 6 hours of sunlight in November and December. And the sun doesn't get very high above the horizon. So the UV rays are not strong enough for their bodies to make vitamin D, hence why they do give out vitamin D supplements to their patients. But some cities in the northernmost areas of Alaska near the Arctic Circle do go several months without any sunlight. But at least in Anchorage, where I said they don't get sunlight, they do get sunlight. So I want to clarify that and apologize for my misspeaking. And she did agree that happy lights are great. So just wanted to clarify that. If I say something incorrect and you are in the field that I'm talking about, please feel free to message me. Definitely want to be all evidence-based forward on this podcast. So feel free to message me, whatever, yell at me. I don't care. If I say it wrong, let me know. But she was super sweet. And it was really cool that someone in Alaska was listening to my podcast. So thank you so much for reaching out. And I really appreciate it. All right, now getting into the actual topic of the episode. Today, like I said, we're going to be talking about nutrition and breastfeeding, a vital topic for new moms or anyone supporting one. Even if you're not a new mom and this is your second, third, fourth, whatever baby, and you're breastfeeding, it's important to know all this. Breastfeeding is not only nourishing for the baby, but also demands a lot from the mom's body. So in this episode, we're going to explore the nutritional needs of breastfeeding moms and like nutrients that help during breastfeeding, which, spoiler alert, they're very similar to pre-pregnancy, pregnancy, and postpartum nutrition, but just want to touch on them again because they're important. We're going to talk about tips and then we're going to talk about myths regarding breastfeeding. So just a quick synopsis of the show going forward. And I do want to give a disclaimer that this is not a diss on those who choose to formula feed for whatever reason. I had a horrible breastfeeding journey. Just to be completely transparent with you all, that is what this podcast is about. I was clear about my postpartum journey, so I'm going to talk about my breastfeeding journey just really quick. If you don't want to, you can skip this part. Anyway, my breastfeeding journey was not beautiful. My baby, she did not like to latch. She did not have a tongue tie or whatever reason that people comment on and they're like, oh, this is why they didn't. She just did not like it. Okay, that's fine. However, I was a new mom, so I was like, well, I'm just the scum of the earth if I cannot feed my baby the way that I thought I was supposed to. So I went 3 months exclusively breastfeeding, all the while dealing with my postpartum depression. So just not a great time. 0 out of 10 recommend. Not a fun amusement ride. I had a horrible time. So I was like, okay, maybe it's just her latch. Maybe I'm just really struggling with the latch and she's just not doing well that way. I don't know. And then we moved to exclusively pumping. And if you have ever done exclusively pumping, you deserve a medal, award, whatever crown, because that in and of itself is a form of torture. I felt like an actual, I don't even know. Like, I know I felt like a cow when I was breastfeeding, but there was just a different air about exclusively pumping. So you had to set your timer for as often as you would feed your baby. So after you've done feed your baby, like keeping the newborn alive, you then had to pump for at least 20 minutes, a minimum of 20 minutes. I did not have any supply issues regarding pumping. My supply did not tank when I pumped. I do know a lot of moms that do amazing breastfeeding and they cannot pump whatsoever. It is just weird physiology. I don't know how to explain it to you, but my body responded well to pumping. So I was like, cool, this is great. I don't have to be overstimulated by being touched. Maybe this will work. So I did that for 2 months. And by the end of the second month, my husband was the one telling me, like, you are miserable. We're going to stop this for your mental health. Like, I'm worried about you. We're not continuing this journey anymore. So I only gave sole nutrition to my baby from myself for the first 5 months of her life, which I'm very proud of. It was wonderful, but my experience was just so mentally hard. Again, I was battling postpartum depression on top of all of this. And I just straight up did not have a good time. So we actually agreed hard on the if we have a second kid, we decided, like, I don't think I'm going to try a breastfeeding journey, and that might make me ostracized in the dietitian community or just in the mom community. But I don't care. A happy mom is way more important than trying to get breast milk when that mom is completely miserable. I'm heavy on fed is best. I do understand the nutritional importances of breast milk, and I am not negating those. It would be irresponsible of me to completely just be like, yes, whatever, like everything is fine. I do understand the importance of nutrition in the breast milk for the baby, but there are other variables that go into how you feed your baby. And honestly, at the end of the day, I just want your baby fed, breastfed, formula fed, G-tube. I don't care. As long as that baby's getting nutrition, that's all I care about. And I do want the mom to experience her baby as well. So if that plays into a role, do what you got to do. There's nothing wrong with you. Just be confident in whatever decision that you make for your child, and screw everybody else that has an opinion about it. Because at the end of the day, you're the mom and you get to make the rules. Responsibly, I should say. Responsibly, you get to make the rules. That was a caveat. All right, 45 minutes later into this episode, we're actually going to get into the first topic. So why nutrition matters during breastfeeding. Breastfeeding moms are the sole source of nutrition for their babies, meaning what they eat directly impacts their milk quality and their own well-being, and inadvertently the well-being of that child. So per the CDC, the whole breastfeeding process, it is a process, burns about 340 to 400 more kilocalories or calories per day than the amount they consumed before pregnancy. So yes, you do need more calories while you're breastfeeding. And of course, the number of additional calories for a breastfeeding mom is going to be affected by her age, activity level, and whether or not she's exclusively breastfeeding or breastfeeding and formula feeding. Many variables go into how many calories, but if you are breastfeeding, you generally do need more calories. And trust, your body is going to tell you. During breastfeeding, that was the most hungry I had probably ever felt in my entire life. Proper nutrition during the breastfeeding period is going to help maintain your milk supply, replenish nutrients lost during that pregnancy and lactation journey, and boost your energy levels to meet the demands of caring for a newborn and then as they grow older as well. So what are those essential nutrients that breastfeeding moms need? Should breastfeeding mothers increase any intake of nutrients? And yes, the only nutrients that mothers need in excess, like increase during lactation, are going to be choline and iodine, actually. This does not mean you don't need the others that I'm going to say any less. It's just iodine and choline are actually needed at an increased rate during the lactation process. So here are the key ones to focus on. Protein, obviously. Protein is crucial for milk production and repairing those tissues that got a little bit degraded during pregnancy. So you're going to aim for about 75 to 100 grams daily from sources like lean meats, eggs, beans, and dairy. I've already covered protein sources in the previous episode, so I'm not going to bore you, but protein is very important, aiming for about 75 to 100 grams daily. And then we have calcium. Lactation pulls from calcium from your bones, just like it did during pregnancy if you don't consume enough. So consuming enough is completely vital. Aim for about 1,000 milligrams daily from dairy, fortified plant milks, or leafy greens. Again, covered the sources in previous episodes. Just want to touch on that calcium is very important during this, and it will pull from your bones if you're not getting enough. Another nutrient is iron. Iron obviously helps replenish those stores that were lost during pregnancy and delivery, and good sources include lean red meat, spinach, and lentils. And then our favorite one that keeps popping up, omega-3 fatty acids, specifically the DHA. DHA supports the baby's brain and eye development, salmon and fatty fish. I'm not going to bore you again with the sources, but cannot stress the importance enough of the omega-3 fatty acids, specifically DHA. Just get your omega-3 fatty acids in. It is so important for that baby, and honestly so important for you too. And then we have vitamin D. So breastfed babies rely on maternal vitamin D levels. So make sure you're getting 600 IU daily through sunlight, fortified foods, or supplements. And okay, so speaking of vitamin D, I know vitamin D supplement drops are common for breastfed babies. So I wanted to clarify the current recommendations because I actually had a friend who recently had a baby reach out to me and be like, why did I get vitamin D drops in my baby shower gift? And so I wanted to give a recommendation because it's not often talked about, actually. So vitamin D supplementation depends on whether you are breastfeeding your baby or how much formula with vitamin D your baby drinks. So here are the current recommendations from the American Academy of Pediatrics for vitamin D for babies. So for babies that are breastfed or partly breastfed, need 400 international units, IU, of liquid vitamin D a day. This should start soon after birth. And babies need this amount of vitamin D supplement until weaned or until they drink about 32 ounces of a day of formula with added vitamin D. So if you were exclusively breastfeeding, it would probably be smart to give them a vitamin D drop, making sure you're not giving more than 400 IU, but it is smart to throw that into your regimen. And if your baby is formula fed and getting less than 32 ounces a day, so if they're in the early days of newborn stage and they're not getting quite 32 ounces yet, of formula a day with vitamin D, you can also do the 400 IU of liquid vitamin D a day. This should start soon after birth, just like breastfed or partially breastfed babies. And babies will need this amount of vitamin D supplement until they drink about 32 ounces of that formula with the added vitamin D, which formula generally does have vitamin D into it. So once that baby hits 32 ounces or more, you don't need to do that supplement anymore. Huge caveat, disclaimer, whatever you want to call it. Please ask your doctor, pediatrician, regarding the vitamin D supplement. That is just the current recommendations from the Academy of Pediatrics. And then the next essential nutrient, like I said before, this one is actually an increased need during lactation, is iodine. And I have talked about iodine before. You can find iodine in dairy products, eggs, seafood, or iodized table salt. Very important for thyroid function. Iodine is completely underrated. Just make sure you talk to your doctor if you're going to start a supplement or anything like that. They'll let you know if you need to. And then the other one was choline, which you can find in dairy products, eggs, meats, some seafood, and beans, peas, and lentils. So those two, iodine and choline, are increased needs during lactation, which I thought was really cool because I do not feel like that is, talked about often. When I was breastfeeding, even when I was, a dietitian in breastfeeding, I honestly didn't realize that until I really dug into research. And switching gears, we're going to talk about myths and breastfeeding and diet. And I just remember my brain swirling with all these myths and being like, what's true? What's not true? I spiraled every time I tried to look up something regarding breastfeeding because you would get 1,000 different opinions. But I wrote down 5 different myths that I felt like I consistently came across, and I hope this will help at least one person feel a bit at ease when they're super confused about this whole lactation process. Myth number 1 is going to be focusing on certain foods will increase your milk supply. All right. So it's been said that if you focus on foods like oatmeal, barley, brewer's yeast, and beer, ginger, basil, banana, pumpkin, those will supposedly boost your milk production. But unfortunately, and I'm very sorry, there's no evidence and there's no proof that these actually work. Many of the foods that people say that will increase their milk supply have been used for centuries in various cultures and are very nutritious. And I'm not negating that. However, there's just no evidentiary reason to believe that these will, like, you eat this and then your milk supply will be more. Does that make sense? It certainly doesn't hurt to include these foods in your diet. They are very nutritious, but you may not see significant changes in your supply. And I get it. If you are someone who is just desperate to do something to increase your milk supply and you are struggling and you're just begging for scraps, honestly, from your body, do what you got to do. Try it. That doesn't hurt. Eating more oatmeal, barley, ginger, basil, banana, pumpkin, that's only going to help the nutrition content of your breast milk and for your body. But I'm not going to promise that it's going to boost your supply. You know what I mean? That's all I'm saying. And then myth number 2, you have to avoid certain foods so your baby doesn't get gassy. All right. So when a breastfed baby fusses for seemingly no reason, it's always attributed to gas caused by something that the mom ate. And I just remember when Harper would be a little bit more fussy, they would immediately blame me, for eating something that she didn't like. And it very well could have been, but it also was like, well, she's a newborn and she might have a scratch on her leg and she doesn't understand why she's angry about that. But a lot of the time, it's not true. For a majority of people, what you eat is not going to make your baby feel quote unquote bad. However, your breast milk does change flavor depending on what you consume. And breast milk flavors can accustom your child to the type of foods your family eats, but when you're introducing those for the first time, your baby may be a bit reluctant to try different flavored breast milk, especially if it's garlicky or spicy. But the flavor, it's not going to hurt them, if that makes sense. It's a completely different story for babies who have a food allergy or sensitivity, most commonly in reaction to the dairy in mother's diet. That's pretty common, not common, but like if there is going to be a sensitivity from a newborn, it's most likely going to be about dairy. But only about 3% of exclusively breastfed babies have this problem. So not a huge percentage. This doesn't mean your baby isn't fussy because of something you ate. I'm just saying that you don't have to immediately avoid certain foods because it will 100% make them gassy. That's all I'm saying. So at the beginning, if your child has no known allergies, everything is normal in your diet, eat as you would. And then if you're simply noting that your child doesn't feed as well or consistently seems more fussy or gassy after certain foods that you eat, consider avoiding those items for a few days to see if it helps. This myth is saying don't eat these foods because it will 100% make them gassy. That's all I'm saying. If you notice it in your baby and she's a little bit more fussy because you ate this and you noticed a pattern, cut it out, see what happens. And then if you have more questions, ask your doctor or the pediatrician. And then myth number 3, breastfeeding will make you lose weight. One of the biggest misconceptions about breastfeeding is that it's going to immediately make you lose the weight that you gained during pregnancy and just make it fall off without basically any effort. But that's not everyone's experience. Many people find that they hold on to a little bit of weight while they're nursing because breastfeeding moms, they are hungry. And rightfully so. Like I touched on at the beginning of the episode, your caloric needs are increased and your body is going to let you know that, hey, I need nutrition to be able to supply this milk. And that hunger hormone is basically like a huge alarm in your body during this process. And on the note of trying to lose weight or bounce back culture, which, by the way, screw bounce back culture, just what are you bouncing back to? A body that never gave birth? Sorry, that's not a thing anymore. Like, you gave birth. It is beautiful. Appreciate what your body have done. I'm sorry. I just have such beef with bounce back culture. It is such bullcrap to put that expectation on a mom who literally just brought life into the world. But I guess that's neither here nor there. Anyway, all right. So trying to lose weight too soon after childbirth can actually jeopardize your milk production. If you are exclusively breastfeeding, immediately going into dieting mode can have a negative impact on your milk. So the recommendation is to wait at least 2 months for your milk supply to be firmly established before actively trying to lose weight. And while you're in this dieting mindset or whatever, and you have complete autonomy to do so, but you're going to want to aim for gradual weight loss, no more than like 4 to 5 pounds a month, nothing more than that, because drastic drastically cutting your calories or rapidly losing weight 100% will affect your milk supply. And then that in and of itself is a horrible experience as well too. You will not be able to feed your baby if you are not eating enough. If your body doesn't have enough nutrition for yourself, what makes you think that you're going to be able to create excess things that's going to come out of your body for your baby? It's just not. So during the breastfeeding period, losing weight is not necessarily like should be the forefront of your mind. You can of course be conscious of your decisions and choosing more nutrient dense whole foods for your food options, but actively losing weight. It's like if you're and you're like, I want to lose 20 pounds in 2 months. That's actually not recommended during breastfeeding. And then myth number 4, no caffeine while breastfeeding. So women who enjoy a cup of coffee and the energy boost that it provides you, you can rejoice because caffeine is not off limits while you're breastfeeding. Research has found that only 1% of caffeine that you drink ends up being in the breast milk. So, and I'm not saying some babies are not more sensitive than others, but the consensus of research is only 1% of the caffeine ends up in your breast milk. So you can rejoice and enjoy your cup of coffee without guilt. During breastfeeding, it is recommended to still do the 200 milligrams per day like you were doing your pregnancy without much worries. You're still not going to do your 400 that's advised or recommended for the average population because you are feeding your baby, and experts note that younger babies are more sensitive to caffeine in the breast milk. So if you're consuming caffeine, again, this is just going to be watching your baby and see how they react. If you're consuming caffeine and you notice your newborn having difficulty sleeping after breastfeeding, you can just scale back a little bit your caffeine intake. But once the baby gets a little bit older, you can start gradually increasing your caffeine intake. But even if you are a newborn mother, you can still enjoy at least a cup of coffee without it really impacting the quality or what's in your breast milk. And then myth number 5, this one's controversial and I'm aware of that. So taking this on is not, I'm ready for it. Anyway, myth number 5, you can't have alcohol while breastfeeding. Let me be clear. Alcohol 100% does pass through your breast milk to your baby, and there has been no safe amount of alcohol found that has been defined during breastfeeding. I want to make that 1000% that is on the record that I had said that. But it is recommended, or there is no negative data saying taking in up to 1 standard drink a day. Remember the standard drinks sizes, not a huge glass of wine. You got to make sure you're adhering to those standard drink amounts. At least 2 hours before breastfeeding is not known to be harmful for a baby. So, for example, if you have a drink and then you wait 2 hours, it should be fine for baby. However, if you want to have more and I'm an adult, I'm a fully functioning adult and I want to have more, that is your choice. Or you can't wait the 2 hours. So like say you have a drink and then your baby's hungry an hour later, it's best and recommended to give them stored breast milk or give them baby formula. And then if you need to pump during that hour or whenever, like if you're drinking and you need to pump, you need to make sure if you are pumping that you are labeling that milk, hey, this has alcohol in it, or hey, I had X amount of drinks on this when you put it in the bag, or you could just throw it out altogether. I know that's like, oh my gosh, don't do that. It's whatever. But just, you can throw it out or you can save it and do it for a milk bath. Whatever you want. Just don't give it to your baby. Now, I have talked to professionals that say, hey, if you can find the baby, you can feed your baby. That is going to be your decision in your discussion with your doctor and your your baby's pediatrician, because that is a very a very parental minded decision to make and what you decide is best for your baby. But the recommendation is you can have 1 standard drink and then wait 2 hours to feed your baby. Across the board, that is the current recommendation. And on the topic of alcohol, I know brewer's yeast in like beer, I know they say that it could potentially increase milk supply, but unfortunately, that's just not true. Because alcohol may actually inhibit your milk flow, like the let down, the initial thing that gets the baby to start drinking, and reduce the amount of milk babies get, and can even reduce your entire milk supply if you're consuming alcohol daily. So that's important to remember too. So if you're like chugging beers because you're like, I'm going to increase my milk supply, that actually is doing a negative impact on your milk supply. But hey, if you are someone that's like, hey, I had a Guinness and it increased my milk supply, that's amazing for you. There is no current evidence that states that. That's all I'm saying. That's the purpose of this podcast, right? This isn't an anecdotal podcast. I am just saying what the current recommendations are and what the science says. But again, I'm not negating people that are saying, hey, this helped me. Or if they're like, I'm willing to do anything, give it a go. You know, if you're of legal drinking age, of course. And then we're going to get into practical tips for breastfeeding just to help you increase your milk supply. So to increase the milk supply, the name of the game at the end of the day is getting that baby to latch or pumping. If your baby's in the NICU or whatever, and you just need that latching stimulation and making sure you're fueling yourself properly. That is completely underrated. I feel like mothers often thrown to the wayside because the baby's here and mothers forget to eat. There's just a lot of variables that make the mother not seem as important during this postpartum breastfeeding journey, but you are just as important and you deserve to be fueled properly. So getting that baby to latch often is going to let your body know that you need to make X amount of milk, and it should cooperate with you. I do sympathize and completely understand that there are just some women whose bodies have a difficult time producing milk breastfeeding, and you are a warrior, one, for even trying, and two, if all you breastfed your baby was 1 day, 2 day, 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, every single mother that has tried whatever, you deserve a medal. Okay. It is no small feat. And if you're like me, who's just, if we have a second one and say, you know what, I'm not going to do it. I'm just happy your baby is fed. Let me say that loud and clear. I'm just happy that that baby is fed. All right. And then tip number 2, you can prep ahead if possible. And I'm not meaning like being in the kitchen prepping meals at a time, because that's just not realistic if you have a newborn and if you have a newborn with other children. That is unrealistic of me to say, hey, you need to be prepping all these meals and be in your kitchen for 3 hours a day. That's what I'm not going to say that to you. I'm talking about prepping ahead, like strategically placing granola bars, bananas, things that obviously like won't go super bad, like really quick, in different places where you're most likely to be breastfeeding. Because honestly, when I was breastfeeding, I felt my hunger like while I was feeding Harper. So placing snacks throughout the house, that's prepping ahead, or putting it in your diaper bag. Hey, the baby's not the only one that needs food on the go. Okay. You can put snacks in there for yourself too. And that's going to help you sustain energy throughout the day when you're not necessarily thinking about getting to the kitchen and grabbing a snack for yourself. And on the same note, another tip, eating frequently is going to help you maintain your energy levels and help your supply. Frequency is so important. I know you can set a timer if you are one that's like, I can't even think about eating right now. I'm just so in the trenches of newborn phase, and that's totally fine. And I hear you and I see you, but set a timer on your phone for every hour and a half to 2 hours. Be like your baby and eat every time your baby eats. I'm not saying full meals. Do not mishear me. I'm saying a small snack to just help maintain your energy levels and help sustain that milk supply, especially when you're establishing that milk supply. And then another tip, listen to the hunger. Breastfeeding moms are going to feel hungrier, and your body is telling you that it needs fuel. And I'm not saying full 5-course meals every single time that you feel hungry. I'm saying choosing the best nutrient-dense foods that's available to you during those periods that you do feel hungry. And then when it is mealtime, focus on those whole foods. Like I said, the best nutrition for your baby, because the nutrition that you are eating is going to be coming to your baby. Point blank period. So focusing on nutrient dense foods, and then also the frequency of it just needs to be a little bit more frequent than the normal person. And last tip, staying hydrated. That is just as important as getting that baby to latch frequently. So as a nursing mother, you need about 16 cups per day of water, which can come from food, beverages, and drinking water to compensate for the extra water that's helping to make that milk. A really good tip that I used when I was breastfeeding is to drink a glass of water every time your baby feeds. And if your baby's feeding every 45 minutes to an hour or even 2 hours, you are getting in a lot of water if you commit to doing that. And babies typically do not need anything but their mother's milk to stay hydrated for the first 6 months of life. Again, this is important. If your infant does appear dehydrated due to like vomiting, diarrhea, or anything that lasts more than 24 hours, you definitely need to consult your baby's pediatrician. If staying hydrated is a task for you, which it is for me, even without a newborn, be sure to always keep a water bottle with you. An aesthetically pleasing water bottle that's like cute to carry around, that goes a long way. Pleasing to the eye will make you want to drink more. I know that sounds stupid, but I promise you it does. And another way to increase water intake is getting one with a straw. Straws increase your water intake. I don't know, just because of ease, but it does increase your intake. So getting a cute, pretty little, whatever, Stanley hydro jug, I don't know what they're called. That is very important for hydration. And again, cannot emphasize the importance enough, as important as getting that baby to latch. So if you're a husband to a breastfeeding mom, go out and buy her a really pretty, cute tumbler, Stanley, whatever you may want, and just surprise her with it, because that's really a sweet gesture, because it's helping your baby too. But breastfeeding is a beautiful way to nourish your baby, but it also places a significant demand on your body. So it is not without trial. So by focusing on nutrient-dense foods, staying hydrated, and giving yourself grace, I made sure to put that into the notes, giving yourself grace and making the best decision for your baby, you can support your health and well-being during this special time, because you are just as important during this breastfeeding journey. You're the one that's making it, mom. You have got to nourish yourself. You are important as well. You deserve to be properly fueled too. So you can help fuel that little tiny human that you just made. Regardless if you're a mother who breastfed for an hour a day, 6 months, a year, 18 months, 2 years, you are a wonderful mother. That child was specifically chosen for you, and you were meant to be that baby's mom. Breastfeeding is a journey, and sometimes the journey ends earlier for others. Journeys sometimes last longer than others. Your journey is going to be specific to you, and the best advice I can also give you during this journey is to not compare, because comparison is a thief of joy. So whatever you do and whatever you choose to do with the consultation of your baby's pediatrician and your doctor is the best decision for that baby, okay? You're a wonderful mom, and I'm so proud of you. Thank you guys so much for tuning in to this week's episode. I hope you all had a wonderful Thanksgiving with your family and loved ones. I guess this concludes the baby series, ? Who knows what series we're going to go on to next, but this was fun. I really enjoyed it. I felt like I learned a lot just researching for these episodes. So I hope you all got at least a second of knowledge from this podcast. If you wouldn't mind, it'd be really cool if you could give this podcast a rating on Apple Music or wherever you find it. But if you don't, that's totally fine too. No, I'm just kidding. And if you do have a topic you want us to talk about, you can go to our podcast Instagram, Dish and Nutrition Podcast, click the highlight reel, and there should be a box, and we'll look at it going forward. And on that note, you've been dished.